Good evening and welcome to our regular meeting this Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024. Can I get a mover and a seconder to open the meeting? Moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Jaworski, that we open the meeting at the call of the chair at 7:04 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. And now we will move into closed session. We will reconvene to our regular meeting once we're done this, and so we'll single Canada and all the rest of the agenda after that. So be it resolved that Council reconvene to closed session to discuss the following item under Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act, SO 2001. 2, a meeting or part of a meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter being discussed is K, negotiations, specifically position related to an ongoing negotiation. All those in favor of going in? Carried. So we're now going to closed session. We'll return and report at a later time. Good evening and welcome to our regular meeting of council this Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024. We are coming out of closed session. So then, before getting to the call to order, I do want to introduce Jason Vaughn, and I'll let David Robertson do the particulars. So nice to meet you, Jason, and go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and the viewing public. I'm pleased to announce and introduce to council our new Deputy Fire Chief, Jason Vaughn. Jason Vaughn comes to us from the City of Ottawa and South Dundas, with history in both those municipalities and the fire services there. Comes to us with a lot of the experience that we require to fulfill this position, and we're very, very excited as a group to have Jason on board. So, thank you, Chief. Welcome, Jason. Yeah.
All right, did you want to say anything, Mr. Vaughn, or you're okay just being introduced?
Okay, thank you.
All right, then just as we normally do with new people, if I can get a round of applause, welcome to South Glengarry, Mr. Vaughn. All right, so we'll go to call to order. Moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that the April 2nd, 2024 meeting of the Township of South Glengarry now be opened at 7:52. So just to be sure procedurally, that's us coming back out of our first one. So 7:52. All those in favor? Carried. So we'll stand for the singing of our national anthem. Excuse me there. So are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, approval agenda. Are there any changes or amendments to the agenda?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, there are a couple changes to the agenda. Specifically, through the consent agenda, item 11B, letter regulating outhouses is being pulled, along with 11E, resolution request amenity sharing MOU with school boards. 11K, resolution significant financial and budgetary pressures relating to infrastructure. 11M, resolution tile drain loans amounts. As well, from the second closed session, item 2B, personal matters about an identifiable individual is being removed and will be replaced by 2K, negotiations, specifically a position related to an ongoing negotiation.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion as amended? Carrie, did I ask for a mover and a seconder before I did that, just to follow? I think I asked if there was any changes. So then I should say moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Bougie, that it be resolved as amended. And all in favor? Thank you for that. Sorry for the approval of the minutes. Are there any errors or omissions that were noted? Seeing none, moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor McDonnell. Be it resolved that the minutes of the following meeting, including closed session minutes be adopted as circulated. Previous meeting minutes, March 18th, 2024. Public meeting minutes, March 18th, 2024. All those in favor? Carried. We will now move to presentations and delegations. 7A, Glen Walter Water Tower Water Main Replacement Ainley Group, to be introduced by Ms. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, we are happy tonight to be bringing Ainley Group forward, and representing Ainley Group is Mike Ainley, to give an update on our Glen Walter Water Tower and Water Main Replacement and Expansion Project. Council will remember that we kicked off this project in 2022, and anyone who attended the public meeting in 2023 would have had the opportunity to meet Mike, so he would be a familiar face for this project file. And without further ado, Mike, it's over to you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm a little, I'm not sure of the procedure here. Do you want me to bring up the presentation myself and share the screen, or you have it there? I see, I can just see it. I don't think I can manipulate that there though.
No, if you were just to let me know when you would like me to
Can you move the
switch.
slide ahead for me?
Yes, if you just let me know when you'd like me to switch the slides, I can do that for you.
I'm not sure how are you seeing it? Is it on your screens, or do you have a video that you're seeing?
Yes, we have it on our
Is it all on
screen.
your computers?
Yes.
Oh, so I could share the presentation? Would that be easier? Or are you seeing it now?
I have it up now. If you let me know when to
I'm-
change the
I'm
slides.
just- Let me just try, I'm going to try sharing the screen and seeing if that works with you guys.
Sure, just so you know
No,
that.
I can't do that. Okay.
So we
No, okay, no problem.
We'll- we'll have it up on our screen,
What I'll need,
and
Yep.
just let us know when you want to change the slide, and we'll be glad to do so.
all right. Well, if you could change the slide now, I'm just welcome. This is to talk about the Class EA for the water tower. The purpose of it, I'm going to have to squint a little, but I do have a big screen. Provide an upgrade to council regarding the proposed new Glen Walter elevated water tower and water main replacement extension project, specifically completion of the project file report. The project file report is the end culmination of the Schedule B Class EA. Summarize the evaluation of alternatives in the selection process, summarize the public agency and the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne consultation process, provide a budgetary cost estimate for the new water tower, and outline the project's next steps and proposed schedule. Okay, thank you. Can you, next slide, please? Again, I'm not sure of the process, but if you have any questions, even as we go through, I'm fine to take them. But anyway, the service area that will be served by the water tower, it includes the projected population growth by the year 2051, about well, not quite 30 years now, but it's one. In the Glen Walter area, as summarized in the 2022 EVB master plan. It incorporates municipal servicing of Fairview Estates, Sapphire Estates, and Bayview Estates within the growth component as approved in December 2022 through Council Resolution 383-2022. Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, so the project history, the wastewater infrastructure and water supply treatment components of the master plan are being addressed separately. So they're not part of this this project. This is just for the water storage and distribution. The master plan recommended the following projects: construction of a new 1,500 cubic meter elevated water storage tower, replacement of some areas of the water distribution system to ensure the peak flows and fire flows can be conveyed through the system, including replacement of the high lift pumps at the water treatment plant. In addition, the master plan identified the general location of the new water tower on Glen Walter Park Road. And currently, treated water from the Glen Walter water treatment plant is pumped directly into the distribution system, so there are no additional booster stations or storage facilities in the system currently. Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. And now for the project file report, which we're summarizing here. The water tower is a Schedule B activity under the 2023 municipal class environmental process, meaning it has potential for some adverse environmental effects and therefore requires a mandatory contact with the public, review agencies, and the indigenous communities, including the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne. The master plan satisfied most of the requirements of a Schedule B Class EA, but it didn't talk about the height of the water tower, what kind of tank it would be, and it didn't cover building heritage and archaeological screening and subsequent investigations. They weren't prepared, and that was one of the comments that from the master plan that they would need these studies to be done. Therefore, it was determined that this extra level of detail should be documented in a project file report and presented to stakeholders prior to detailed design. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've honed in on the location a bit more precisely. The water tower location is on a 75 meter by 75 meter side. It'll not end up being quite that big, but that's the overall area that we need to hash out for now. Within an 18.8 hectare parcel of land owned by the township at 6618 Glen Walter Park Road, kind of at the east end of Glen Walter Park Road, right where the parking lot is, and just south of that. Next slide, please. So some details of the tower. We've established a height of 52 meters. The capacity will be 1,600 cubic meters. It takes into account the existing municipal properties that are currently unserviced. And just to clarify, the 1,600 cubic meters was mainly due to that being a more standard size that is provided by the suppliers of these tanks, and so it's actually cheaper than a 1,500 cubic meter. So it was best to go with the 1,600 cubic meter, give you a little extra capacity. And then a dedicated transmission main from the water treatment plant is not required to fill the tower. That was a concern. We do, however, need to provide some reinforcing water main or larger water main from on Lana Drive from for quite a bit of to the plant. So that's some extra. And then we came up with a short list of water tower type alternatives. And this is a representation. Don't take it as gospel in terms of either size or height, but it gives you a little bit of an idea of what they would look like from roughly where the fire station is. So there's a composite one, and then there's a composite glass lined. Composite glass line, you've probably seen a few of these stainless these dome reservoirs or tanks that are on ground level. This is basically the same kind of tank, but just raised on a big column. And the composite one is a bit more of a traditional style that you're seeing a bit more of around the area. The next slide, please. Okay, now you're challenging my eyesight a bit. What we presented at the open house, which was last year, in May last year, was basically this comparison of the composite advantages and disadvantages. The basic thing is the main advantage of the bolted tank that sits on top. Oops, sorry. I'm echoing now. Oh, I'm on twice. Sorry. Oh, you muted one of them? No. I'm not sure. I'm connecting on. I'm connected twice. Is my sound okay for everybody else? Am I echoing with you too?
You were echoing with us for a little while there too. But it was perfect before that.
Yeah, I think I still am.
It sounds like the echo or the
Yeah,
reverb has gone away.
I wonder if I can. The problem is I'm entered twice here. Can I? I'm going to leave. I'm just afraid I'll leave on both connections.
Oh, okay, we heard that you're on twice, but
let me
you can
try to-
try and come off, and you can try and come back on. We'll wait that moment. We might be able to boot out the second instance on our end. We'll see if we can do that. Mr. Ainley, can you hear us now? We have removed one of your accounts. Mr. Ainley, can you hear us? Presently has you as muted and without an image on the screen. Mr. Townsend, can you hear us just to check that we're okay on our end? Mr. Townsend, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, and we can hear you, so that's good on that side.
Hi.
Hello.
Perfect.
We were just towards the end of Mr. Ainley's, but we were experiencing some technical difficulties, so I don't know, perhaps it would be
I saw that.
prudent to jump in between while Mr. Ainley figures it out, but we just might wait a few moments. Just thank you for answering to make sure it's okay on our end, the technology.
Yeah.
So Mr. Ainley had, we had some reverb going on, so he was looking to log out and log back in. So we're just waiting on that. Thank you again for popping on the screen.
Yeah, no problem. I was listening actually, so
Oh, good.
it's coming back on.
All right, Mr. Ainley, we can see you again. We've booted you out of the other one, so perhaps if you can try, presently you're muted, but we see you. We should have asked you to unmute. If you,
I've unmuted now. Can you hear me now?
we can hear you now, and all right, then please proceed. If you want to bring up the presentation, if that makes it easier for you, you were on page number.
No, I'm okay.
Okay, so you're on page number
You
8.
got it now. I'm back. Everything's here. It's just that I had two, I was on twice and it was echoing, but I think that's resolved now.
It appears that way.
All right, so we're back where we were, and I'm having a little trouble reading this one, but that's okay because I kind of know the main thing is the composite bolted tank, the lower one. The advantage of that is that it never really requires much maintenance and it doesn't need to be repainted, whereas the other one does. But the other one has about twice the overall life, so it's a 6 to 1, half dozen the other. Ultimately, we did look at them both carefully, and if we go to the next slide. Please. We compared on a number of parameters, cost, appearance, access, the composite one, which is triangular at the bottom, you can access entirely from the inside. The one with the boat tank on top of the big pedestal, you have to access it from the outside. So we considered some of these things to be bigger factors than the other. Ultimately, the scoring came down that the composite tank is the better choice or the preferred alternative. Also, just for some reassurance, it is the less expensive of the two options. Okay, next, please. So in terms of public consultation, we held a Public Information Center, a PIC, on May 16, 2023, and to allow stakeholder input. This was an in-person PIC, plus the presentation was left on the township site. I believe it may still be there. This is rehashing a lot of it here, but kind of condensed it down a little bit. A notice of PIC was published twice in the local newspapers and distributed electronically to 195, or I think it says 195 emails registered to the township's direct notification system. Review agencies, MECP, MCM, and so forth, and the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne Grand Chief Benedict were directly sent the notice of PIC. There were 31 attendees to the PIC. Only a handful of comments were received, all minor in nature and generally positive. And previous Mohawk Council of Akwesasne input received was supportive of the project. This was in connection with your application for funding, and it was very supportive letter, which is good to know. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's a cost estimate for the 1,600 cubic meter composite elevated water tower. Now, this is for the water tower alone. It includes all the site work, the fencing, the pipes, and so forth. But it did leave a few things that weren't in there, and that's like a diesel generator set, which we think we probably should have just in case, for power, standby power. It didn't really allow for a cost of a logo or special colors or letters you may want. That's going to have to be brought into the equation a little bit. And also antennas, communications, and so forth. That wasn't part of that price. But otherwise, at 6.75 million is a fairly detailed estimate provided by Landmark, who is the supplier of the tank, and they will be they'll be taking out the tenders for the project. So we've been working with them. They are the main supplier of these types of tanks. So this is a fairly high level of confidence in that price. It does not include the work at the water plant that we will need to do. We have to replace the high lift pumps. It's kind of they need to be replaced because they're being held together by glue and Scotch tape. Basically, they're not they can't keep running. They need to be replaced, even though there may be other routes you go when you expand your water plant, and ultimately whether it's an expansion there or whether it's through an agreement with Cornwall and so forth. That's all being looked at. Anyway, that's another cost, so that'll be there. And then on top of that, we have about 800 meters of water main that needs to be provided as part of the overall project. That's I'm trying to, let me just call up look at my own thing. I don't. Page Drive. It's on Lana Drive from Page Drive to the water tank site. So it's going actually past Lana Drive, carrying on up to the water plant site. That's one section of water main that's going to be required. I believe it's mostly 250 millimeter pipe or duplicate 150 millimeter pipe. It's a reinforcing. Just we need to get some flow there a little. It can't work its way through the existing system entirely. And then there will be a section on Glen Walter Park Road from Kilkenny Crescent again to the site. So those are the areas of water main that we're going to be required. It's about 800 meters of water main in the end. So there will be cost to that as well. That'll all need to be done as part of this project. There are other areas where improvements will be needed in the future when some of Sapphire Crescent estates get developed and so forth. There may be some other improvements need to be done at that time, but they can be deferred for the time being. So we have about 800 meters of water main. we've got the water tower, and we've got the high lift pumps. And so far, the only thing we've got the detailed level of confidence in the pricing so far is the water tower itself, 6.75 million. Okay, so basically the budgetary quotes provided the water tower suppliers and or based on experience of similar. That includes operation and maintenance and the major maintenance costs. That's kind of the total cost over the life of the tank. So it's 12.4 million, but in 2023, $24. Okay, next slide, please. So the next steps are to finalize this report that we did append as part of the as part of the agenda. There still needs to be a little bit of fine tuning. We have to issue a notice of study completion. We have to, similar to the PIC, we have to send that to all the agencies, to Chief Benedict again for and to whoever has said they want to be kept informed. So that will go out to advise of the notice of filing of the project file report. Once we're hoping we can do all that within the next week or two, to file all those and send the letters out. After that, there's a 30-day review and comment period, then we'll have to address comments if there are any, and submit the PFR project file report to the Ministry of Environment and Culture Parks. All that's anticipated by June 2024. We are currently concurrently doing the design. We've got significant confidence that there won't be too much reaction to this. It's been fairly well publicized already and we had that public open house. So we expect to have the engineering design complete and tendered also by June of 2024. A tender award to the design build contractor a month later, July 2024, or maybe 5 weeks later. We'll get shop drawings for the tank design with it. It'll be it's a design build with respect to the structural design of the tank. That's done by the contractor. We expect the shop drawings for that in September, and shovels in the ground construction start in September of 2024, and project completion, which is commissioning. The tank will be up and running and operational about 13 months later, and then there'll be a little bit of cleanup after that, so into November, December. So the time frame, projections current right now, and we've worked this out also with the with Landmark. If they're successful with this, these timeframes work for them, and it's well in advance of your project funding deadline for that. So, okay, and I think that's it. Is there, oh no, next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. And any questions?
All right, thank you very much for your presentation, and we do appreciate you putting in the kind of operating and major capital items for the life cycle, because as we get into asset management planning, those numbers are important to us. Around the table, are there any members of council that have a question or comment presently? No? Okay, well, thank you very much for your presentation again, and it now has been received, and on to the next step. Have a good evening.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll leave now, so you can leave me. Thanks.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye for now. All right, then we'll move to the Roth's IAM's presentation, and we'll let Ms. Harbers do the introduction.
Good evening, Council, and through you, Mr. Mayor. We have Aiden here tonight from Roth. Roth did our building condition assessments late last year, and so we have Aiden here to give an overview presentation of the findings. So yeah, I'll leave it up to Aiden. Thank you.
Sure. Good afternoon. Or I guess good evening. It's not afternoon. Oh, you're pulling up my presentation. Perfect. So, we conducted a series of facility condition assessments. Actually, if you can go to the next slide, we can just kind of move into some detail. We conducted a series of facility condition assessments on 44 assets for the township of South Glengarry between September and November of 2023. As you'll see here, there are some analysis of the renewal needs for the 44 buildings. We've included 10 years, so the evaluation period for the facility condition assessments was a 10-year period. We've also included a 20-year and a 30-year, really as a reference for some long-term planning. You'll notice there that we have two sets of numbers. The first set includes buildings only, and the second set is buildings and including site infrastructure. So as you're looking at the total renewal needs over the course of the 30 years, the 35 million is the number that would include all of the facilities and the site infrastructure. Through the presentation, most of the values that we look at focus specifically on the buildings themselves, because as we talk about facility condition index and replacement value, we want to focus on the buildings, not the site. There is a more detailed summary report that does include all of the site infrastructure numbers in it as well. Worthy of note that these numbers are in 2023 dollars, which is the year that the assessments were conducted. So even the 30-year building number at 29 million is in 2023 dollars, so it does not include inflation over the next 30 years. Next slide, please. So the methodology that we go through for facility condition assessments does follow an ASTM standard. So namely, we request background information, we review that information from you, we interview staff, we do a visual walkthrough assessment of the site. There is no intrusive testing involved in the facility condition assessment process, no code compliance, zoning, or barrier-free assessments as part of the scope of this project. So it is strictly condition of the building itself. Once the visual walkthrough is done, we prepare a facility condition assessment report with any findings and photographs attached to it. Those reports are detailed with the specific elements of the building and recommendations associated with those buildings, whether it be study, repair, or replacement of the individual components of those buildings. We also prepare an opinion of probable costs. This would typically be a 20 or 30 year chart that shows the costs per building for the next 20 years for those capital renewal needs. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we do with all of this information, once we have it, the individual reports for buildings are usually about 200 pages. So we summarize all of that data, and we use what's called a facility condition index, which is an industry standard benchmark used to compare buildings across an entire portfolio. It is a very non-biased way, strictly based on numbers, to compare the condition of one building against another. And the way we do that is we take the sum of the renewal needs in any given period of time, and we divide it by the replacement value of that building, which gives us a percentage value. The higher the percentage, the poorer the condition of the building. So it's worthy of note that the township is using a 5-year FCI, and that consists of any backlog work, so work that should have been done in the past, anything in the current year, and for the purpose of all of these graphs, we use 2024 as the current year, and then 4 additional future years, so 25 through 2028 inclusive. So we add those years together to get us the sum of the renewal needs, and then the replacement value is determined by adding up the cost of all the individual components of the building. So if we were to replace that building, how much would it cost to replace all of those parts as they are today? So in kind, that doesn't include any upgrades or modernization of the buildings. With that information, we have an FCI scale, as you can see there. So anything less than 20% is considered in very good condition. 21 to 40% is good condition. 41 to 60 is fair. 60 to 80 is poor condition, and then anything over 80 is in very poor condition. And at that point, shut down the building or disposition of the building is probably where you're looking at. So there's some definitions there for each of those scales as we go. So the color-coded graph that you see there will be used on the next slide, as we've got a detailed breakdown for each building. So next slide, please. So here we have details of the FCI for each building. We've broken it out by categories that were provided by the township. So for each of the categories, there is an average, and noted that the average FCI for each of those portfolios is not derived by taking an average of each of the FCIs. It's actually adding up all of the replacement value for all of the buildings in that particular category and dividing it by the total replacement value of all of the buildings in that category to get the category's FCI. Again, with all of these, none of the site infrastructure was included in this. It's strictly the buildings in this particular scale. So as we look through here, you can see that the building that, again, by the numbers in the worst condition is the Midway Pump House. Next slide, please. So this graph, again, just takes those FCIs, so that what we saw on the previous slide was the current FCI for those particular buildings. What we've done is we've extrapolated that information out over the next 10 years for each of those categories of buildings. So the green line is the overall facility condition index for the entire portfolio. And as you can see, currently at 11.19, over the next 10 years, if there is no investment in capital renewal, you'll end up at 32.07. With administrative, fire hall, rec, and roads and wastewater, we've got individual breakdowns of those individual categories as well. Again, with this, it's none of the site infrastructure is included. This is strictly the buildings that we have here. And again, just to note that to get these totals, it's not the average of the individual FCIs, it's the total of all of the deferred maintenance divided by all of the replacement values. So as we move into the next slide then just takes the total the total capital renewal needs for each of those individual portfolios again, and the cumulative total. for each of them across the next 10 years. Again, not including any site infrastructure here. So we've broken it down by category as well here for you to see. If you'll note that in 2029, there seems to be a big spike in everything. The reason for this, just by way of explanation, our assessments were conducted in 2023. So for building components that are beyond their expected useful life that we cannot see, so things behind walls like plumbing, piping systems, etc. If they are beyond their useful life and are functioning as expected, what happens is that renewal need gets deferred until year 6, because we assume that building assessments are conducted on a 5-year life cycle. So again, 5 years from now, we would come back and reassess that system. And if it's still functioning as intended, we would push it out to a further year 6. The reason we do this is we don't want to push it out so far that if something actually happens to that system, there's questions about why we didn't capture it, even though it is functioning at this point. But because it is functioning as it sits right now, and we can't see it because we don't do intrusive testing, we just push it out to that year 6. So that's why you see that large spike in 2029. And you'll see that reflected in the FCIs as well. If you look back at the previous slide, you'll see that the FCIs do increase because that value comes in as well. So next slide then, please. So here we have just some dollar values for you. So this is an annualized funding to maintain your current FCI. And we do it as an annualized funding. Again, as a municipal council, it's hard to plan for, $10 million one year and $1 million the next year and $35 million the following year. So we take the total needs for the 10 years and we just give you an annual number. So in this case, to maintain your current facility condition index across the portfolio, you would need 1.15 million a year annually for the next 10 years to maintain that. Again, there's some detail here by category if you wanted to look at the individual categories. There's no funding in the current year because we assume your budgets are probably already set for this particular year. So we start the funding allocation in 2025. Again, none of this includes site infrastructure. It's specifically just for the buildings. Next slide, please. So here we have the top 10 assets by their 5-year renewal needs. So by dollar value, which assets require the most amount of funding over the next 5 years. Again, not including any site infrastructure. Next slide, please. So this one is this is a little bit different. So this one is the top 10 assets by FCI percentage. So again, the buildings that are in the worst condition by their FCI percentage. You'll notice here that, or in the previous slide, that the Charland Rec Center is $2.1 million worth of renewal needs. Here it is at 20% FCI. So the reason that might have the most dollar value in need, but not the highest facility condition index, is because that building likely has a higher replacement value. So therefore, the higher renewal need weighs in against that, and your FCI is lower. So next slide, please. And then, just I guess some summaries here, and then I can probably take some questions. So again, we're not suggesting that you need to spend $35 million over the next 30 years to maintain your buildings. However, using the information provided here and in the summary reports, the township should take this information and help update their asset management plan to use as a guide for how to invest in your buildings over the next 20 to 30 years. So your asset management plan takes into consideration not only the building condition information, but also things like accessibility, heritage status, zoning, code compliance, utilization rates, types of use, etc. That all help to inform that decision on what to do with the buildings as you move forward. So any questions? I guess, sorry, one thing I should, we did talk about the average and how the average is calculated. So I did mention that already. Okay, so yeah, any questions?
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from around council of the presentation? We'll go to Councillor Jaworski and then to Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thanks for you, Mayor McDonald. And I guess maybe it's more of a comment than a question. But I'm very glad we did this, but as folks might recall, I did sort of put out some caveats about how this, and maybe it's I'm still scarred by watching this, how this information got played out on the school boards, where the FCI of a lot of schools were, 30, 40%, in terms of like degradation. And that was often used as an argument to, justify wanting to close more of them. But there's really a lot of positives, I think, that have really come out of this process. I mean, first of all, it's really good to have all this information about all our buildings and what needs to be done. But I really wanted to highlight, like, overall, like, the results are actually really excellent, like, in terms of having this many buildings, like 44 buildings, and having so many in such excellent condition. I think I just wanted to highlight that because, my kids all play on hockey teams. We go to lots of rinks. I can't tell you how many times I get compliments from visiting folks about what great condition our facilities are in. And I think, this one, like Irina, folks see a lot, but I think it's just, it's an example of just how great care has been taken over the years and is continued to be taken by the folks who are maintaining these buildings today. So thank you to all the staff who's involved in maintaining our assets. I did have a chance to look at some of the more detailed reports, and a lot of them, there's a certain element of, I don't want to say generic, but certainly there's certain things like certain ages of the buildings. There's certain things that repeat themselves about like replacing electrical systems or that sort of thing that I guess, even though our results are excellent, I would say they're probably still conservative in the sense that a lot of our assets, because we maintain them so well, do last beyond their useful lifetime. So even though there are some very large dollar figures about what, things to be, replaced, I still think that some of that, just the way we keep things, and again, I know you're not recommending that we go out and that this money needs to be spent, this is more about a prioritization tool. Just if folks are watching online and have concerns, again, a lot of the values here, I would say, are conservative in the sense that our assets will, we have a history of them, lasting beyond their useful life in a lot of cases. So thank you. So thank you very much for this report.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Thanks for the report. I'll agree with Councillor Jaworski. It's very nice to see that it's mostly green when you look at the overall condition of our buildings. The part that concerned me, and when I read this, I wasn't thrilled. Your first page, you say we need $30 to $35 million. Your last page, you say you don't likely need $35 million. So then I read all these pages and a lot of numbers, and I say, well, what the hell do they mean? Like, it's kind of frustrating that you're putting numbers out there, and then at the end you're saying, well, that's likely not what you actually need. And we all know, with the amount of budget that we have every year, that there's no possible way we're going to spend that kind of money on our buildings in the next 5 years, 10 years, or 30 years, like it's not doable. So I think as far as the condition and the rating of the building, I think that's all great, but I don't think the numbers mean much for me. We're not going to put, 1 point whatever million aside every year. We don't have that much money to dedicate towards our building unless it's something we save up for a major overhaul of some specific building, but I'm just not sure what to do with those numbers that you've put out there.
I don't know if you...
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, go.
Please go ahead. There was just a slight delay in our feed, so go ahead.
Oh, no problem. No, I was just going to say, so absolutely, I can understand how that might be confusing. But as was mentioned earlier, through proper maintenance of your buildings, you may not have to spend money to replace components of your buildings or the buildings themselves, right? So these numbers really are based on industry standard expected lives and replacement costs of the individual components of the building. Take an air handling unit, for example, if it needs to be replaced in 2027 and you replace the motor and change the belts, you might be able to push that for another 5 years, right? So this is really more of an overall picture that can be used to help develop your 3 to 5 year capital plan and then your longer term asset management plan.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Lang.
I guess I could respond then. So I guess overall, I guess we can use it as a guide, but we're going to have to get our own numbers, I think, by the sounds of it. We're going to have to go out and see what we can do. It would use it as a guide that this building is going to need some attention and see what we can come up with numbers, but the numbers aren't going to work for us that are here.
Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. And this time it is a question, and for Ms. Harbers. Like through this process, just thinking ahead, we just finished budget 2024, but for budget 2025, was there things through this process, I don't want to say surprises, that's not the right word, but maybe certain things in terms of priorities that, you were already looking ahead to, and you could give us a preview of those, like things that we might not, again, I don't want to use the word surprise, but things that, like need to be on our radar, I guess.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. There's nothing that I can speak to specifically this evening. There are obviously 44 buildings, and there's a lot of items identified there. But as I'll mention in my report coming up, is this information is so that we can continue with our asset management plan. So we cannot complete our asset management plan without a building condition assessment of every facility. So that's why we are doing this. It will then highlight some items that will come up that, we should be doing this next year or in 5 years. The numbers may change. Maybe we get other local prices for, say in here it says that it costs X amount of dollars for a hot water tank, but we know that whenever we go to do that project, it will come in lower, and that therefore these numbers then become less. It's not that we can't use these numbers, but this is an overall picture of what we will need, what we could spend at our facility. And again, it needs to be inputted into our asset management plan so that we can meet those that regulation in July. So, I mean, once we have the asset management plan, then that will identify, those key items that we need to be working on over the next 10 years. But yeah, I guess I know it doesn't answer your question right now, but again, with 44 facilities, that's why an asset management plan is important, so that we can project what's coming up. And as of right now, we don't have that for these types of buildings. So it will be good to have that moving forward.
And from my standpoint, one thing I enjoy is that we are going into strategic planning soon, which levels of service, and asset management planning is generally kind of one of those. And I do see Mr. Townsend, you have your hand up.
I do, yeah. I just wanted to comment and say, as you talk about the numbers, they really are very budgetary, and a couple of examples I'll use for that. As we look at when COVID hit and lumber prices went up 400%, we're not adjusting costs on a facility condition assessment to account for those supply chain issues or local conditions that you might have. So that's sort of one thing we do. I mean, the numbers are reviewed on an annual basis, and they come from industry standard cost guides. The other thing I'll mention is that as you look to do this, say for example, you might have an entrance vestibule at a building that is earmarked at $5,000 to replace some doors. But through that replacement process, you upgrade the doors, you add in, automatic door operators, you do some upgrades to it as well. So it's important to note that, $1 of capital investment doesn't necessarily address $1 worth of deferred maintenance or capital renewal need as you're doing those upgrades and modernizations as well.
Thank you. All right, I don't see any further questions of council, and I would like to also highlight that it seems nice that the condition is there, and I'd like to give Ms. Harbers as well as our past employees and staff, because I must applaud the previous council too, because there was quite a bit done during COVID when we instead of seconding people, they did a lot of improvements there. So like that tradition obviously has come through, and thank you for highlighting us and getting us on our way to asset management plan. I think that's a July 1st document. So quickly upon us, and this was retrieved at a perfect time to put it in. Thank you very much. All right, so then we will move into our meeting, in particular, our first staff report. So Ms. Harbers?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think Aiden was just going to stay on just because we are accepting this report, and then in case there are any other questions, and then he'll leave the meeting. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's good to
Yep, I
address
will.
it, because I wasn't sure. Perfect. So, moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Bougie, be it resolved that staff report 2024-35 be received, and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry receive and accept the building condition assessment summary report prepared by Roth IAMS detailing the current condition of the municipality's facilities. Are there any questions or further comments from council? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Moving to action request 8B, Glengarry Mental Health Initiative, fee waiver request, moved by Councillor Bougie, seconded by Deputy Mayor Lang. Be it resolved that staff report 2024-36 be received and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry approves the request from the Glengarry Mental Health Initiative to waive fees in the amount of $540.86 to cover the cost of soccer fields and building rentals. Ms. Harbers.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. This report is for the Glengarry Mental Health Initiative. They are a nonprofit organization in our community. Their funds go towards providing support to those in need. This will be their third annual soccer tournament at Paul Roseau Park. They are looking to have the fees waived for this event, as they've done in the past. I will mention they did receive the $2,500 through the grants and donations request that was approved earlier this year. And then these waived fees would be above and beyond that. The fees being waived would amount to $540, as mentioned in the report, for the fields and the full day Paul Roseau Park building rental.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from council? Thumbs up. All right, all those in favor? Carried. So for the Charland Recreation Center electrical panel, moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor Jaworski, be it resolved that staff report 2024-37 be received and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry proceed with Simcoe Refrigeration for the supply and install of an electrical control panel at Charland Recreation Center for $118,142 plus HST, and furthermore, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign all applicable documents. Ms. Harbers?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So as approved through the 2024 capital budget, we are looking at replacing the electrical control panel at the refrigeration plant in our rec center. In the past, the township has used the cooperative purchasing method for procurement purposes. This helps save time on administration and with building tenders and issuing them, which especially is helpful with projects within the plant room, as we have a small window of time to get these projects completed outside the ice season. As you can see in the report, this project is, much more than just replacing your typical electrical panel in, say, Tartan Hall, or your standard facility. It does include the cleanup of existing electrical, the installation of the Seasonal Plus controller to make our plant run more efficiently, and also ensuring that the new panel matches the existing equipment and installing sensors to ensure proper readings of our equipment. Based on Simcoe's quote through LAS Canoe, the cooperative purchasing method, and based on their historical knowledge of previous repairs and operations of the system, we are recommending to award the project to Simcoe Refrigeration. We may also be able to secure some funding through the Save on Energy program, and if it were to be we were going to use Simcoe, they could help us with that, as we have to complete an analysis and calculations to be able to apply for such program.
Thank you. And I believe the budgeted amount was $120,000, I'm correct? Yeah. All right, so that was within budget. Are there any questions of comments of council? Okay, great. All those in favor? Carried. Moving to 8D, Award Procurement 03-2024 Grass Cutting Facilities and Parks, moved by Councillor Jaworski, seconded by Councillor McDonnell. Be it resolved that Staff Report 2024-38 be received and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry award tender 03-2024 for grass cutting facilities and parks to Green Acres Snow Removal for zones C, E, F, and H, and Charged Up Lawn Works for zones A, B, D, and A, B, D, G, and I, and furthermore, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign all appropriate documents. Ms. Harbers.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the evaluation was based on, for the grass cutting facilities and parks. You'll notice we did our evaluation a little bit differently this time, as it was also based on, references as well. We did receive 10 submissions for this, and prices submitted were disclosed during the tender opening. Based on the evaluation, we are recommending that 2 companies, Green Acre Snow Removal and Charge Up Yardworks, complete the work for us. Charge Up Yardworks, you may recall, they did one of our sites through the last contract. And this would be for 2 seasons with the option to enter into a 3rd season if the township and contractor agree to it. Pricing has increased, obviously, I've outlined in the report since our last submission, but I believe it is to be expected, with the inflation, increases in insurance and fuel costs.
All right. Were there any questions or comments of council on this particular? Deputy Mayor Lang.
Is it the same areas? We haven't added or removed any of the sites?
We haven't moved any sites, but I'm just trying to remember now if our Williamstown Fire Hall was part of this one, or no, I think it is part of this one, and we would remove if we don't have that facility anymore, but for the most part, it's the same sites.
Any further questions? All those in favor, the motion is read. Carried. Moving on to AE, Award of Procurement 2024-04, moved by Councillor Bougie, seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Be it resolved that Staff Report 2024-39 be received and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry award Procurement 2024-04 for the supply and placement of surface treatment to Miller Paving Limited in accordance with the procurement submission of $110,600 plus HST, and furthermore, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign all appropriate documents. Ms. McDonald.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, this one's pretty self-explanatory. It came in under budget, which is nice in 2024, and we're recommending award to the low bid who has done work in South Glengarry before and the neighboring jurisdictions. Thank you.
Okay, I had one question or clarification, or Deputy Mayor Lang, go ahead.
My hearing. I thought you'd said 110, and it's 210, I think.
Yes, it's 210,600. Yeah. Thank you for that clarification. Yeah, I thought if I read it differently, we could get a discount. So if you look at impact on budget, section 9, additional expenditures for this work will include things. Is that within or the 210,000, or would that be an addition, but still under 245,000 budget?
Excellent question, Mr. Mayor, and through you. That it's 210 to Miller, and then the granular that we put out extra would be in that 30,000. That's between the budget number and what the contract came in at.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I follow up on that? So this is granular over and above what we approved last meeting? This is an extra 30,000 of granular for that, or whatever it was you said for that road?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it may not be, it won't be 30,000. It's just like a little top up
Okay.
before we lay down our.
All right. You're just saying there's 30,000 available. Okay.
Further questions or clarifications, perhaps? Nope. All those in favor of the motion as read with $210,600, not 110. All those in favor? Carried. Moving to 8F, no mo May 2024, moved by Councillor Jaworski, seconded by Deputy Mayor Lang. Be it resolved that Staff Report 2024-40 be received and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry supports the Township's participation in the Nature Conservancy of Canada's No Mo May initiative, and furthermore that Section 2.1 of Bylaw 11-2020 being the Clean Yard Bylaw and Section 2.6 of Bylaw 09-13 being the Property Standards Bylaw not be enforced for the month of May 2024. Mrs. Haley.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I believe the staff report speaks for itself. This isn't new to South Glengarry. This would be our third year if it's approved. So we are asking council if it's something that they want to participate in, so staff have direction accordingly to respond. Thank you.
Are there any questions, comments of this one? I think we've done it last, as she said, as Ms. Haley said, 2 years. So, okay, all those in favor? Carried. Council remuneration and expenses report, moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor McDonnell. Be it resolved that Staff Report 2024-46 be received and that the presentation of the 2023 Statement of Remuneration and Expenses of members of council be acknowledged. Ms. McDonald?
Good evening, Council. So as you received in your email last week, this is the annual reporting of council expenses and remuneration. A slightly more detailed list was sent out to council. And I'm available for any questions.
If I may, the one thing would be regarding communications and supplies, as that is higher, and I do look to 2021. Perhaps it's something we can talk about in strategic planning on what we want to see on this. However, can you please explain just the 2021 to 2022 difference, because I believe they are referencing slightly different numbers.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. So in 2022 and 2023, a more concerted effort was made to bring council-related expenses within those council GLs that we have. So what you're seeing there are some items that are for activities of the whole of council, which is why you're seeing it a bit differently. I think previously certain expenses were being captured within the general government GLs.
Thank you. Councillor Jaworski?
Through you, Mayor McDonald, yeah, just to follow up on that, I think it's probably something we want to, because it was done one way, and I know last year I had questions of why it was changed, but there were so many things happening around budget that I did not pursue this particular topic. But I think we just need to take a look at this to make sure that, you know, we're consistent with how other townships are reporting, and also because this is a requirement of the Municipal Act, that we're consistent with sort of the intent of the Municipal Act. Obviously, it's very important to be transparent in terms of, you know, the remuneration and expenses that are being reimbursed directly to council. But so I think, you know, maybe that communication and supply, when you're saying it's whole of council and it's more general government items, it seems in a lot of cases that's not how other townships, they wouldn't include that in this kind of report. But again, I think that's just something we need to discuss and just make sure that because, I mean, obviously people look at this, it's important that they understand it, it's important that they can compare it to make sure that they, you know, to decide for themselves if they're getting good value from their representatives. So it is important, I think, to follow a certain custom and not to be an outlier in how it's done.
All right, yeah, so that might come up at strategic planning, just to how we look at that, but all those in favor of the report as received? Carried. Thank you. Development Charges Reserve Fund Transfer, moved by Councillor Bougie, seconded by Deputy Mayor Lang. Be it resolved that Staff Report 2024-41 be received and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry authorizes the transfer of the remaining balance held in the Township's Development Charge Reserve Fund, being $357,000, or, oh my goodness, why can't I speak today? $357,778,000. Sorry. I feel like I'm saying numbers wrong, and I apologize to everybody for this. $357,778 and any accumulated interest for the use of the 2024, for use in 2024 to offset budgeted spending at the Williamstown Fire Station, the Charland Recreation Center, and the Airport Road Public Works Facility. Mrs. Haley and Ms. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we did the best we could to provide background information to council, given the time frame that has passed since the former township of Charlottenburg has had a development charge bylaw in place. So you'll see in the report it goes back to 1995. And the benefit of the history was just to hopefully make council aware and the public aware of when the fund was established, how the dollars were collected, the purpose of collecting the development charge dollars, and then how they were to be allocated. There's been a lot of time that has passed since we have not collected development charges. And you may have noticed that in 2005, it was explored by the Township of South Glengarry to reassign or to establish development charges once again, and at that point it was defeated by council. So as you mentioned, we have a number of dollars that are remaining in the fund. During our budget deliberations for 2024, this was, raised by our treasurer, and we felt it was good use to allocate it. So the resolution is required to make sure that staff has the direction to allocate those funds and spend them accordingly. I'm not sure if you want to add anything financially, Ms. McDonald. Thank you.
All right, are there any questions or comments of council? We'll go to Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. I just wanted to thank you for putting together, well, first of all, for the idea to look at this, and then the report that you presented and the history, because I feel that, this is something this is a reserve fund that's kind of sat there. I know over my previous term, it wasn't clear, and now you've provided a lot of clarity, and I think this is the appropriate thing to do. This money was collected for specific purposes. It should be used for those purposes. So thank you very much to the both of you and everyone else involved in moving this forward and finally getting some clarity and movement on it.
Deputy Mayor Lang, I know you were always a fan of this one, so I don't know if you have something that you'd like to add too.
No, I'm happy to see this happening. I think it's been sitting there basically untouched since amalgamation in 1998. Wondering what the interest was. Hopefully we had it invested at 2 or 3% at least, eh? But I have a feeling we didn't collect anything on it, but who knows?
I imagine it would be bank interest, so whatever that was, at times it was 2%, but there was no GIC if I recall correctly, and that's correct, I think. Okay, so with that, I just, from a budgeting next year standpoint, this year's budget, 2024, had that 357,000, and I think there was also sale of land in there for 100,000. Those are two kind of items that are one time, so next year we won't have this money to offset some of the costs. Because you had mentioned during the budget meeting, I think for sale of land, unique things. So thank you for bringing this to us so that we could see it, because we don't just want money coming in and then being allocated. So I thank you on behalf of council for bringing it forward for us to review. Seeing no other questions, all those in favor? Carried. Moving into bylaws, zoning bylaw amendment. Moved by Councillor Jaworski, seconded by Councillor McDonnell. Be it resolved that staff report 2024-43 be received, and that bylaw 2024-17 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 3809 to rezone the subject property legally described as Lot 33 of Plan 26 being part of one reference plan 14R 2285 in the geographic village of Lancaster, now in the township of South Glengarry, County of Glengarry, located at 32 Oak Street, Lancaster, from institutional IN to residential R2, to permit a single detached dwelling as the main permitted use on the subject property to be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council the second day of April 2024. The council of the township of South Glengarry confirms that no comments from the public were received on this application, and therefore there was no effect on the decision. Ms. Haley.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. So the staff report that's before you is a recommendation to rezone the subject property located at 32 Oak Street that is known as the former St. Joseph's Parish Hall. To residential 2, so from institutional to residential 2, to permit the conversion to a single detached dwelling. So the staff report includes all of the required or prescribed information from the provincial policy statement in the official plan. So just to point out a couple of things, we did have our public meeting on March 18th. We didn't have any members of the public in attendance other than the applicant. We haven't received any inquiries from the public whatsoever, so I think that speaks to the public being satisfied that it is being converted to a dwelling. All of you are familiar with the area, so it's completely surrounded by dwellings with the exception of the church, so it's not like we're introducing any new or difficult or incompatible use. We're certainly within our 90-day time frame. We'll be making a decision on day 49. And if this is approved, we look forward to issuing a permit and seeing the conversion of the hall happen and having a new family move into the space. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments of council? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion is read. Carried. Thank you. appointment of deputy fire chief. I guess we said thank you earlier, so this is slightly just more than formality. Moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that staff report 2024-44 be received and that bylaw 2024-18, being a bylaw to appoint a deputy fire chief for the Township of South Glengarry, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council the second day of April 2024. Mr. Robertson.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. As mentioned, this is a formality. This is a requirement of the Fire Protection and Prevention Act of the province, is that the position of fire chief be appointed through bylaw. And in times of his or her absence of the fire chief, the deputy fire chief maintains all the responsibilities of the fire chief. As such, we've chosen once again to put this role through bylaw. So yeah, it's mainly just to formally welcome our new deputy fire chief.
All right, well, I guess welcome again. And are there any questions or comments from around the table? Okay, and if you didn't catch it earlier, we did give an applause, so we're not being callous here, but welcome aboard. Thank you very much. All those in favor of the motion is read. Carried. I was a little presumptuous. Before I read the motion, or called the vote, said welcome aboard. All right. Revised Human Resources Policy and Procedures Manual. Moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that staff report 2024-45 be received and that bylaw 2024-14 being a bylaw to adopt a human resource policy and procedures manual for the Township of South Glengarry be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council the second day of April 2024. This is you, Ms. Dixon.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll do my best to address this. Last meeting, you were presented with an updated human resources policy, and there were questions with regards to adjusting the cost of living being a 3-year average, and I believe council wished it to be instead reflect what the previous year was, and that was what was updated in the policy and is presented before you this evening.
Any questions or comments of council? Deputy Mayor Lang?
Thank you very much, and Mr. Mayor, through you, thank you for doing it and getting back to us so quickly. It's nice to have it the way we thought it was going to be.
All right, all those in favor? Carried. So we'll move into items for consideration. Information report, Community Awards Gala. Ms. Treverton, or Ms. Haley on behalf of?
Thank you. So yes, I'm here on behalf of Ms. Treverton. So basically, the memo before you this evening is to confirm the proposed date in September for the annual 2024 Community and Business Awards Gala. This year, we made sure that there was no conflict with any of the United Counties events, specifically the Warden's Banquet. So if this works well with council's schedule, this is in keeping in line with previous dates that were generally scheduled. And yeah, if it works out well, we'll proceed with scheduling accordingly, booking this facility. If not, we would need to have some additional dates so we can confirm with the Recreation Department and then start planning accordingly. And we're also looking to have 2 members of council again to assist us in the review of the nominations as well as the review of how the event is being organized. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bougie?
Thank you, Ms. Haley, and well, Ms. Treverton, who put this together. And date's fine with me, and I'm fine if council so wishes to sit on the nomination committee as well again this year.
Okay. So you said council so wishes. Are you volunteering yourself or the previous group? Sorry. I'm volunteering. Sorry. Okay, great. Okay. Does this date work for everybody else? The 21st? I believe I checked it had worked for me. That's the farmers. There's no crops. Okay. Councillor Orsi. Okay. And so Trevor, do you have somebody that you'd like to, or Councillor Bougie, there's somebody you'd like to work with?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Councillor Jaworski if she's available. We worked together in the past, and I thought it went very well. So, if she so wishes.
Would you make yourself available to that? I know you get nominated frequently.
I appreciate the kind words from Councillor Bougie. So, because he asked. Okay.
Okay, so we have the date set and your members of council. Thank you. Move to 10B, support resolution, amend the blue blocks regulation. This one was previously brought forward to Deputy Mayor Lang, by Deputy Mayor Lang. Would you like to speak to it, or would you just like me to read it as is? Because we need a seconder. Can I look for a seconder first, I guess, and I'll read the resolution for the blue box amendment? Okay. Yeah. It could have. Doesn't make it to the floor. Yeah, that would be interesting. Be it resolved that moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of South Glengarry hereby support the resolution passed by the Township of Perry and requests that the province amend Ontario Regulation 39121 Blue Box so that producers are responsible for the end-of-life management of recycling products from all sources. And furthermore, that this resolution be forwarded to Premier Ontario, Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks, MPP, Nolan Quinn, and the Township of Perry. Deputy Mayor Lang?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. And I won't speak to it too long. I think everybody's well aware of it. But it's a shame that producers are responsible now and they're going to do all residential, but they're not going to pick up recycling for any businesses or anything else. And that's going to be left likely on our shoulders. And because it's going to be a smaller amount, it's going to be costly per ton, I suspect. So I'm hopeful that province will see the error of their ways maybe and rectify it.
Yes, and if I may take a small tangent, because I did meet with one of our local business owners. I mentioned it earlier today, and they said it was okay to be public, is this is just another cost borne upon our commercial base. And looking at Henderson's downtown Lancaster, they had said they pay $4,500 a month for hydro, which was staggeringly high for me, but it's another cost borne by the commercial. So I think this is a great one to support that way. All those in favor of the motion is read. Carried. Support resolution uploading of the community infrastructure to province. This was another one moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, looking for a seconder. Seconded by Councillor McDonnell. Be resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry supports the resolution passed by the County of Lambton and requests that the Province of Ontario upload from local municipalities the responsibility of costs associated with the continued construction, operation, and maintenance of major municipally owned highways throughout the Province of Ontario to the Ontario Minister of Transportation, or alternatively to appropriately increase the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund to municipalities so as to fairly and equitably allocate resources to Ontario municipalities. And furthermore, that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Ontario Minister of Transportation, the Premier of Ontario, MPP Nolan Quinn, and the County of Lambton. Deputy Mayor Lang?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. And this resolution originally came from Lambton, but it came because of the fact that the province has taken over Don Valley Parkway and the Gardiner Expressway, and they're realizing and accepting the fact that municipalities cannot keep shouldering higher and higher cost without a little bit of help and being downloaded on all the time. But if they've accepted that responsibility for the City of Toronto, I think we'd like to see them do it fairly across the province and, award the rest of us a little bit more money as well to look after our infrastructure.
All right. Councillor Jaworski.
And just like since this was brought, 2 weeks ago now also the City of Ottawa is also now going to be getting some additional funding as well. So that trend continues. So if they're like Deputy Mayor Lang said, if they're acknowledging it doesn't make sense for them, it doesn't make sense for us either.
I think on a gravestone it says the vanguard of a nation. So good for one, good for all in that regard. All those in favor of the motion as read? Carried. Moving into the consent agenda. The first one pulled was 11B, letter, regulation on outhouses. Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, I guess, and we just received, it's been in our agenda, and the public, anybody who may have read our agenda will notice that there was no information to back it up in there. But we've received a letter just recently, and so I'm not 100% know where I stand on it, but I just like to look into it a little further, make sure that we are not missing anything, and if there is reason for us to look at changing our bylaws, that maybe staff gives us a bit of update on where we are at the moment and where we can decide where we'd like to go from there.
Would an info report be sufficient that we could pull in the future about a little bit more about this, or are you looking for a staff report?
I'm not fussy, and it's not just me, it's what the rest of council would like to see as well, so.
Deputy Mayor, or sorry, Councilor Bougie?
Through Sarah, yeah, this letter basically it stated that an outhouse that was placed near their property line, and there's little to no regulation on where it goes, no permit process. So I think they're looking for some kind of bylaw to maybe be put in place, so this doesn't happen in the future. Maybe in areas where it's built up a little more. I guess it would be something I would be in favor of looking into for sure.
Councilor Jaworski?
If I understand correctly, like staff is looking at, is it, well, like revamping some of the bylaws, and maybe instead of having like a separate staff report or something, maybe it could just be something that potentially staff could bring up in that context if it's more efficient, or I don't know if Ms. Haley could speak to that.
Ms. Haley?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our bylaw officer, manager of municipal law enforcement, Pat Mario, has actually drafted a new property standards bylaw for council to consider. Our goal is to have it presented at our September 15th meeting with a combination of a PowerPoint to introduce the new bylaw and what's changed, possibly first and second reading, and giving council time to review the bylaw and understand what's being proposed. Within that presentation, we can include a couple of slides that would list options for council if they choose to regulate outhouses, and how we can regulate them, and which bylaw they would be best in. So it wouldn't be difficult for staff to include that or take much time.
That seems like a reasonable approach. Okay, and then at that time, I guess, just prepare Mr. Mario for this question will be coming. So as you said, a few slides, and we'll be able to provide an answer at that point in time. All right. 11E, request amenity sharing MOU with school boards. Councilor Jaworski?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor McDonald. So I was, I am on the, I'm vice chair of the Community Schools Alliance, which is a municipal advocacy group that is, advocating for municipal involvement in where schools should be located and maintaining them in our communities. And so I'm always happy to see other municipalities state clearly the benefit of school, like the benefit schools have in our communities, and how important it is to, from a taxpayer perspective, because there is only one taxpayer when it comes to these sorts of things, to maximize how those, how these facilities can be, maximized for the residents who live in those communities. And also it was very interesting to me that, so this resolution from the town of Aurora speaks specifically, to sharing, wanting to have the opportunity to share space with their school board. And this is the counties, SDG counties has an education committee. And at Roma, we delegated to the Minister of Education. And this specifically was one of the items about how to improve facility sharing with school boards. It was one of the items that was brought forward. And so, the minister was very gracious. We had many points. He was very receptive. This one, though, I would say is probably the one that maybe I wouldn't say new to him, but it wasn't, the other topics were ones that we discussed at length in the past. So it's nice to see other municipalities also lending their voice to this specific issue. And I know in our region it is important, because although I'd say here in South Glengarry, we've had relatively good cooperation with the school boards. I know that there's other townships in our area that have had a lot of roadblocks, and some of it's quite sore, because in some cases it's roadblocks to accessing buildings that the community itself did a lot of fundraising towards. So that's why it's one of the items for the local education committee. So I would like to support the town of Aurora's resolution, and I hope other members of council also see fit to support it.
Okay. Councilor Bougie?
Yes, thank you for bringing this forward, Councilor Jaworski. And I mean, like you said, South Glengarry, I feel like we have a good working relationship with, for those of you that play badminton, Wednesday nights, we have a great relationship township to the school board. And I know at my school, in the Catholic school board, our gym is used every night for volleyball, ball hockey, and those things. So I think access is very important to recreation and that shared, I guess, partnership with the community and school boards. So I'm definitely in favor of this as well.
Okay, imagine thumbs up for at least 2, 3, 4, 5, or 4. Yeah, so can you can you prepare a support resolution for the next council meeting? Excellent. I pulled 11K. It's the same thing that Deputy Mayor Lang pulled, but I just wanted to support Mayor Hagedorn in Loyalist. We're not going to rewrite it. I just wanted to pull it to show that this is across the board, and I guess that's just a personal relationship. I'd like to say thank you for them for pressuring as well. 11M, tile drain loan amount. I believe this was Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Tile drainage loans, for those that don't realize, I'm quite sure it's provincial, that there's money is put aside that people can borrow to do land improvements, specifically tile drainage, at a set interest rate payable back over 10 years. And it's been in place for, I'm pretty sure I used it in the 80s when interest rates were higher than they are now and received a reasonable interest, at the time, and I think they're still at 6%. They've been at 6% for quite a while. It used to be 8, and then you dropped to 6. I think they've been there for quite a while. But 6% so it didn't get used for a while when interest was real low, but I think it's something that could be quite useful again to farmers to continue to make those improvements in their land. And the limit is 50,000, which has been in place a long time, and it doesn't go very far, 50,000 anymore, as everybody realizes. So this resolution's asking for them to, I think, double it to 100,000, and I would support it if we wanted to come back with something next time. And
Would there be will around the table? I can do, yes, shake hand. Oh, perfect. So if we can have a support resolution for that one for next meeting as well. I think that was all from the consent agenda. So moved by Councillor Bougie, seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Be it resolved that the council accepts the list or the items listed on the consent agenda. All those in favor? Carried. So we will be moving back into closed session. So moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that council convene to closed session at 9:27 p.m. to discuss the following items under Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act SO 2001. Just make sure I have the right ones here. A meeting or part of a meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered is, we did remove the first portion earlier. Then it's E, litigation or potential litigation, specifically potential litigation. And that negotiation, specifically instructions for negotiations. And then again, we were adding a second one, and it is negotiations, specifically position related to ongoing negotiations. All those in favor? Carried. All right, I guess we're off, yep. Moved by Councillor Jaworski, seconded by Councillor McDonnell. Be it resolved that council rise and reconvene at 10:39 PM into open session without reporting. All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that administration be directed to carry out all actions as specified in the closed session minutes. All those in favor? Carried. Confirming bylaw, moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-19, being a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by resolution, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council the second day of April 2024. All those in favor? Carried. So adjournment, moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Be it resolved that Council of the Township of South Glengarry adjourn to the call of the chair at 10:39 PM. All those in favor? Carried. Have a good evening, everyone.